Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Talking About the Big Stuff podcast with Michael Cole and Matthew Cravat. I am Michael Cole.
And I am Matthew Cravat.
Let's get started.
Ready to get started?
All right, everybody. So today's topic is found family.
Because Mike wanted to reveal that Logan is not his biological son. They opened the door one day and like Bam Bam, he was there in a basket and they just found him and said, look, let's raise this child as our own. Maybe he's from Krypton.
Did you see the
Side note, not from Krypton.
Did you see the picture that I shared on Instagram a few weeks ago? It was probably around Christmas because my grandmother framed a bunch of pictures of me with her and my grandfather for Christmas, and there's two of them where it looks more like Logan than it does like me.
You know, I'm an old man. You asked me to remember something I saw a month ago. I probably did, and I
I
probably
was
said, "Oh my god,
fucking adorable."
I think I did. Things change.
Yeah, things do change. All right, so the topic of found family is one that I wanted to talk about for a couple of reasons, but the big one being is that in my life I've had some strong opinions on it, and I think that I kind of started out thinking it was weird and odd and creepy, and I've come around to it. So I'll explain all of that, but I just wanted to lay that out there. And
yeah, I'm a big fan of the found family aspect. I'm also the fan of cutting family off and never talking to them again.
Yeah,
balance in all things.
Yep, except for balance. Moderate. No, that was moderation. Moderation in all things except for moderation.
It works with balance.
Yeah. Yeah. So the reason why I say that I started off kind of not a big fan of it is that like I was raised in a family that was very specifically strong on the concept of family, like in the traditional sense. Not necessarily like I wouldn't say that my family is intense about blood in that way. Like if for example, if
you're Catholic, you guys drink blood.
Yeah, but that's because we're vampires.
Same
but
thing.
we like if someone in our family was adopted, we wouldn't feel like they were less family than somebody who is blood related, right?
Yeah, there has to be a legal process.
But kind of like that is absolutely kind of true in my family, depending on who you're talking to, and so like I kind of grew up with that strong feeling of like family is family and friends are friends, and it's fine for friends to be close, and obviously like at some point Sarah becomes my family, and you know what I mean, but that was specifically marriage, and like if we had a kid before we got married, it had been a little bit half and half, and there's a lot of that tie, which that's why when you said legal, it has to be legal, it literally has to be legal.
Yeah. So what about if you didn't choose the person? So here's the thing. My two brothers are married.
Yeah.
My wife has a sister, so I have 3 sister-in-laws.
Yes.
I didn't choose them.
Nope.
But they're my family.
Yep. No, my family would be like, that's your family, you fucking deal with it.
I mean, Jocelyn, I would choose you. I know you listen to the podcast, Joss, so I would have chosen you.
Yeah. But yeah.
And I helped you and Jeremy meet. Remember, I helped you guys meet. I set up his MySpace page. It's all because of
MySpace.
Me. I take credit for that. Yeah, literally.
So yeah, my family is very strong on that. And it took me a long time to realize. Okay, so I'll start off with that part of it, and then say there was a transitionary period when I was like, I'd say a teenager until probably less than 10 years ago, where when you get people who are a little bit over the top with the found family language. So when they're like, oh, this is my mom, and it's just like somebody you met in your 20s who's older than you. Like if I started referring to you as my dad, like even though because we're friends and you're older than me, and people do that shit, that I to this day kind of find that cringy. And I just never could understand that.
But I think you have a good relationship with your father, though.
That's a good point.
So like I know like my mom and her mom never had a
Yeah.
good relationship, and the fact that there were two older women in my mom's life that she often referred to as her other mothers or her mother figures and stuff is because she didn't have a good relationship with her mom.
Yeah.
So Lil and Olive filled roles, and they were considerably older than her
Yeah.
that, her mother should have filled.
Yeah.
Like they were confidants and advice givers and stuff.
True.
But I mean, she didn't call them their mother. She would say, that she's like my other mother,
Yeah.
but like she didn't call her mom. Like she didn't go that far.
Yeah. But there's a lot of in maybe it's a my generation thing, but there was a lot of that shit going on where,
Yeah.
especially work relationships, where you'd be like, "This is my work mom," and like I'm like, just an older person that you like that's
Yeah. I have it more on the more level, not up and down, but sideways. So like when I grew up, my dad's business partner, who's one of his best friends since pharmacy school, like, and they became business partners when I was like 5,
Yeah.
but even before 5, he was Uncle Lee. Like I always called him Uncle Lee, and just like I called my biological uncle David uncle, like
Yeah.
he was equally my uncle. He gave us presents the same way, like in a Catholic family, he would have been like a godfather. That Jews don't do godfather the same way. They have them, but it's not like a member of the family and active in the kid's life the way I know it tends to be for a lot of Catholic and especially Italian families.
my
But
godfather is just
uncle,
my dad's best friend, and I
yeah,
haven't seen him
yeah,
in
but
15 years.
yeah. So you're unusual. Yeah,
Of course.
but that's my from my experience. Like people I know, the
Yeah.
Godfathers acted like they were uncles.
Oh yeah.
Um, but like Lee was like Uncle Lee, like not like when he had kids finally, and I was older. Like they weren't my cousins,
Yeah.
but he was still. And my kids grew up calling my best friend Mikey Uncle Mikey, and even my buddy Eric was just a musician who I wouldn't say is like a brother to me. They called him Uncle Eric. Well, that's just Eric. But to them it meant like it was someone who was more than just a friend of the family,
Yeah.
someone that was completely trusted with them and was part of their zeitgeist growing up.
Yeah.
Not just one of my parents' friends.
So the term aunt and uncle, I've always kind of stuck with just actual aunts and uncles. However, I understood from a fairly early age that in other cultures, that is a kind of just a term for other.
In Indian, it's everywhere.
Yes, yeah, and
like literally anyone older than you by more than a couple of years is uncle or auntie.
My neighbor, when I was from like the age of like 9 to 15 or 16, they were Vietnamese, and they referred to their stepmom as aunt. And my parents just said in certain cultures, aunt or uncle are just important figure, adult figure that's in your life that has no other specific title. So that,
and if you watch Uncle Roger cooking videos, he's Uncle Roger, and he's like, oh look, it's niece and nephew, oh uncle, because it's just a term of endearment kind of thing.
Yeah. So yeah.
But so, do you have a found family member? Since we're talking about, like, do you have a personal, like when your opinion changed on it, do you have someone you consider found family? Because I do. I got me some found family.
I think that if COVID hadn't happened, I would have 3 or 4 people that I consider that, but like because of COVID, like
So they lost their place.
relationships that were just heading towards that direction. Like I would say, like, not that you and I haven't had a good relationship, but I think that like I would probably be there with you at this point if COVID had never happened, because we kind of stopped hanging out as families.
Yeah, in person.
Like we went to parties at your house, and then COVID happens, and we've seen each other, and we've obviously, I've cat sat for you, and you've checked the mail for me, and we've so there's you, there's a few other people who I would say we're on similar trajectories, but then COVID happened. But
yeah. And while I wouldn't really call the people who are listening in order, a guest we had recently, Mookie, while I wouldn't call him my brother realistically, we refer to each other as brother from another mother all the time because of more for all the things we have in common and all of our personality quirks and stuff, how we could have been brothers in the ways we act more than our friendship. But I have an adopted, non-legally adopted sister who and it's funny because my dad chose her first. She worked at the drugstore that he worked at. When he sold his business, he sold it all, his phone number, the business name, and all the supplies to the oldest drugstore in New York, Bigelow. My dad owned a surgical supply store, and they basically bought all his inventory and put it in the upstairs room that they really didn't use for customers previously, and started a surgical department. And they hired him to work a couple days a week to run it and teach people how to do it, so that eventually, when he fully retired and moved down here, they would just have a surgical department, but they inherited all of his customers because he basically kept the phone number. People would call and say, "Oh, by the way, we've moved. We're upstairs from Bigelow on 6th Avenue." People would come there instead of his store if they were smart. But there was this one woman who worked there who was almost exactly my age, maybe less than a year older than me, who was from Canada and didn't have any family here. And my dad and she hit it off, and he basically adopted her as like a daughter. Like, my parents became her parents in America to give her support, and then when we finally met, we hit it off amazingly well, to where I'm happy that she is my sister, and she is for like all intents and purposes. And the kids, like Leah, calls her Aunt Cheryl, and to her, it's Aunt Cheryl. It just is. There's no, as much as their other aunts are. The kids call her aunt as much as the other aunts. And when we did my mother's 80th birthday party, she was like, "No guests, just family, extended family, so all the spouses and blah blah blah." My but spouses being the grandchildren's spouses were invited, of course invited. So it's layers, children, grandchildren, spouses, our spouses, and Cheryl. And she was like, I was like, "What about Cheryl?" And she goes, "Oh, I said the children, of course, Cheryl." Like, assume.
Yeah.
So we've got one main one. I mean, people have jokingly called brother and sister and stuff, but she's sister.
Yeah.
Any woman I'm not interested in sexually, sister. But Cheryl for real, for realsies.
My mom had a lot of friends that I think, if she was into that kind of wording, would have probably done that with. So my dad's not a super social guy, or was not a super social guy most of my life up until the last 5 years. And so my mom hung out with...
Hates me.
Well, that's just you. He still hates you, even though he's social now. He has never listened to the podcast, but I explained to him that joke just on the off chance that he randomly started listening, and he seemed to get a kick out of it. He has not heard all the other reasons why that joke is going on, but anyway, because my dad wouldn't go to like things, and my dad's not religious and my mom is religious, my mom kind of became friends with all these old widows at church, and like to the point where like they were, like they always were doing stuff. And my mom's 62, almost 63 now, but like she, like actually yesterday one of these women died, but she was probably in her early 90s. And so my mom's been hanging out with people. Some of them would be over 100 now. Some of them were in their like, some of them were 20 to 30 years older than her. And so she had that group of people like that. And my mom worked at the church for 16 to 17 years, something like that. And before I met Sarah, I would go out pretty regularly with people from work. And my mom would be like, "Oh, there's a new girl at the church who works at the church, and she's new to the country. Can she come out with you and your friends?" And she'd send out a girl, and I wasn't ever sure if she was trying to set me up or what. And I can only remember one example of this, but she was...
Sounds like she's trafficking.
No, she was Russian, but no, the girl came to the U.S. and then my mom was like, just bring her out to TGI Fridays for trivia night and
punish her for coming here.
It was just
eat these crappy wings.
So yeah, she was an odd girl. She had like this very stereotypical, maybe not Eastern European accent. I don't remember if she was Russian or not. And I had like the little beard.
In Soviet Russia, we eat potato inside, not the skins.
And she said to me, "You look like a guinea pig." That's what she always called me, a guinea pig, because of my facial hair. And I'm like, it's just fucking facial hair. But it was, it's this fluffy.
Are you sure she wasn't trying to be call you a guinea because you're Italian? She just didn't understand the insult.
A Russian insulting an Italian. Yeah.
You're a guinea pig.
But yeah, so my mom had a lot of that going on, but she never really referred to it in that way. But we had people around a lot, but we just, differentiation line between family and not family. I will say one of the things that I did have a hard time with for a long time, that was kind of, it's not really found family, but it, when you're dating somebody or you're married to somebody and you refer to their parents, your in-laws, as mom or dad.
I call my mother-in-law mom.
Yeah, and
It's
my cousins' spouses referred to my aunts as mom or my uncles as dad, on my dad's side. And I remember having a conversation with my aunt one time and her being like, "Oh yeah, the boys call me mom," and I was like, "Oh, that's odd." And she goes, "Why is it odd?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just feel like my parents went through so much shit with me that like nobody else is going to earn that title."
I mean, you call like your in-laws Mr. and Mrs. So and so?
I call them Karen and Ned. I did when I first started dating Sarah. I don't know. We've been dating maybe 6 months. I was at something and I referred to my mother-in-law as Mrs. Cox, and she was like, "Don't do that." She goes, "Just call me Karen." She goes, "What do you call Ned?" I'm like, "Mr. Cox."
Yeah.
And she goes, "No, we're not doing that." And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah. My daughter-in-law calls us mom and dad.
Yeah.
Which is not what she calls her parents because, they're in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
And dad is, I don't know what she calls her mother or father's Baba.
Yeah.
It's the same as Indian.
Yep, that makes sense. I suppose if I was like married to somebody who wasn't as white as me, and they had and like if Sarah's parents were like,
She's whiter than you.
yeah, it's true, yeah, she is, but if I then maybe, although I actually now I refer to my father-in-law half the time, I refer to him as Bappa because that's what the kids call him, but I have never called him dad. But yeah, so anyway, back to found family. So I don't know why I came around to the idea in the last few years. I suspect that moving down here, I think, helped. I think I saw the purpose of it. I also think that like I love my family, my extended family, but I also am realizing that like I don't think that I was getting what I needed out of having them be my entire family.
I think that's part of found family is we have a like a platonic ideal in our head of what a brother is like, what a sister, and our real siblings, families don't live up to our platonic ideals of what those people should be. So when we find a person in other walks of our life that we get close enough to it and they meet that ideal, it feels natural that you say, "Well, you're like a brother to me because you actually do the things I think of what a brother does, unlike the assholes that I grew up with who just happen to live in my house."
Yeah. I mean, I don't. That's the thing is that when I started understanding the concept, it wasn't because anybody had failed their role in my head. It was largely because it was like I, uh, and this might be like a weird.
And I wouldn't say failed, but they only get a B. They don't get an A for what your ideal.
Sure, but also like on top of that, so I'm the oldest grandchild on my mom's side, and so like for a long time, I was the center of attention. And so everybody's, Christmas, it was all about me and my sister and all these things, and everyone paid attention, and because nobody else had fucking kids. And as my life has gone through, I shouldn't have put fucking in there, okay? Nobody else had kids. Anyway, now they have fucking kids because they're all adults. But nobody else had kids, so as they added kids and my aunts and uncles added spouses and things got more complicated, that family unit that still kind of feels connected in my brain from when I was like Logan's age hasn't really, it was starting to fracture just in the amount of time we could spend with each other and the kind of time that we could focus on each other as young as Logan. But it took me a long time to realize like, oh, once I found once Sarah and I had Logan, and I was like, I don't want to spend all my vacations with my cousins. I want to go to Hawaii, and I want to go to Italy, and I want to go do this, and I want to do that. And as much as I love those people, I get 3 weeks a year to myself, and I don't want to spend 2 weeks a year on other people that I don't like, that I could be happy seeing 4 times a year for a day, or 4 times a year for 4 hours, and
An annual family reunion would be plenty for one afternoon at the park.
yeah, or like, we go to my grandfather's for Father's Day.
You're gonna be passing through town. Yeah, come stay with us for the weekend while you're driving to Florida.
Absolutely, like, and part of it is how big my family is. You get better time. Like I've had cousins stay with me on their way to Florida. All of them, I think, have been on their way to Florida when they stayed with me. You get more individual time, so you're like, oh, it's Sarah and I,
and it's real time. You actually get to spend your real selves, not we're with 30 other people doing activities.
Yeah, or you're with 30 people at a party. You get 10 minutes per person. It's like, oh, yeah, you're going to leave at 8 a.m., but you got here at 6 p.m. Let's hang out till 10. And we get 4 hours. Like, boom, perfect. And so as those things have kind of expanded in my life, and part of that is, my youngest cousin is going to be 20, to give you an age range. So it's after my sister, it's a 30-year-old to a 19, almost 20-year-old. As they've become adults, it's like we get to interact with them differently, and interacting with them individually is so much better than going into a group. It's a little bit fun in a group, except that I'm now way too old to be drinking with a bunch of 20-year-olds, 20-somethings, but it's, like, it's just a different dynamic. And, at the same time, while all that's going on, it's like we're establishing our own lives. And, Adam has been a bigger part of my life than a lot of people for so long. And now, for the last almost 6 years that I've known you, you've been a big part of my life, especially because of proximity and us being, just having the same kind of, like, everything has kind of made us,
Yeah. My daughter's boyfriend came over for dinner Friday night, and post dinner, she watched all the Chocolate Diamond Media short films that we did, and the bloopers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it hit me how much you and I have changed over the last 5-6 years that we've known each other.
Hawaii's a state.
Give me your marinara.
Give me your. We will have to put that one on the show notes. That is the final answer to the pineapple pizza debate.
The beginning of our true friendship, from you are my temporary employee to, oh wait, we have the same warped sense of humor. We should hang.
Was that the first video we made together?
Yeah, because I didn't have any real lines in it. It's like it was just like, I need someone to beat me up. Can you do this?
Oh yeah.
And let's kind of took off from there.
Yeah, when I realized that we had to stop. Luckily, like, it just looked like my body was shaking the way that twitching, because I was like out of camera, and I was just like shaking from laughing at your improv so much.
I think that's why I told the boyfriend that we just did 5 takes that were just purely improvised, like you knew what you wanted to do. We had the idea, and we just did it. We used take 4. They got progressively funnier, but take 5, you were laughing the whole time, so you couldn't be a dead body. So we had to stop filming. So we can't keep getting funnier. And we went back one and used take 4.
Yeah, I want to film some stuff. I want to do something soon. I mean, this is fun, but like, I also want to get the band back together. But yeah, and I actually, as part of this the found family thing, I really felt, especially again, pre-COVID, things kind of slowed down because of COVID. I felt pretty connected to 2 of your 3 children. Jacob's nice every time I've met him, but I know him by far the least.
He lives away.
Yeah. But Joseph and Leah, I really like, and I got to have some cool experiences with both of them. And so, like, you guys are probably the closest, but then on top of that, there is Sarah has Sarah's friend and her husband, who I love, like both of them a lot. Arguably, we talked about them kind of being like the perfect people to take Logan if something happened to us, but then they moved to Europe.
Did they take him?
No, nothing happened. But they moved to Europe right before COVID, and like literally 6 months before COVID. But like, so they've been in Europe, so like that. Every time we see them, it's great, but I wouldn't say it's the same found family like feeling. Also, Sarah's known her since she was 14 or something, like, so it's not exactly the same thing, but and yeah, and we had some friends down here that I felt like that about, and I would, you know, but I've come around to the concept.
Yeah, I had a friend in college who I referred to as my sister all the time, and it was just because like we weren't really into each other in a romantic way, but we hung out every day together. Like we were together all the time,
Yeah.
and it became, you know, a big. Even though she was older than me by a year, a big brothery kind of protection attitude around it, especially when it come to parties and getting drunk and guys are hitting on her. And if she wasn't into it, I felt very big brother protective of her. So for years, until she became a Trumper, and then I cast her out of the family.
Oh.
Actually, it was before she was a Trumper. It's when Obama was president. She was anti-Obama and crazy.
Oh.
Crazy. She probably doesn't listen to this. She's reached out to me on LinkedIn, and I don't reply. I'm like, I really don't even want to re-engage.
Yeah. You know my friend Wes. He was on the Sinead O'Connor episode. Remember him?
Mm-hmm.
Him and I have known each other since 7th grade, and I would say, even though we've known each other that long, we really weren't friends till high school. But in that process of being friends, like, we lived the closest to each other because we both went to a private high school outside of our town. So we rode the van together for the first year, and then I would drive him home once I got my license, and you know, and we just hung out all the time, and especially once we turned 17, 18 summers, it was like we all of our jobs, we worked at the same supermarkets and convenience stores and things, and we would hang out all summer long, and half the time I would sleep at his house because his parents were gone, and so we hung out, and but we also, as much as we liked each other and we got along, he was he's extremely liberal progressive back in 2001, and I was still a conservative at that point, and so we would get into some heated debates about that. And he and my dad did not get along because we were trying to make a movie in high school, and we were trying to shoot with fake cocaine, and we were going to shoot next to City Hall. There was this nice parking garage that we could shoot in, like, that we could kind of go shoot in and not worry about. And we were going to go, like, have like Ziploc bags of baking soda. And my dad was like, "You're not fucking going to City Hall with bags of baking soda." And so we would always get into these giant fights and about stuff. And at some point, once we finally figured it all out, and we settled, especially once I felt, once I had come around politically and came around to a lot of that stuff, I realized that he was the closest thing that I had to a brother growing up. And, like, especially, even though he's 2 months younger than me, he's kind of like a big brother in some ways, because he
Even though he's
influenced,
younger, 2 months.
yeah, but he influenced me more than I influenced him.
Yeah.
He's the reason why I like artsy movies instead of just popcorn flicks. And he always was pushing, and he pushing the boundaries of how I would think and look at things. And so, I mean, in my note to him, we talked about this a few weeks ago with the notes that I gave to all my groomsmen at the wedding, when we were talking about how we feel about people. I literally wrote to him, like, "You are the closest thing I've ever had to a brother, and I hope that you know that." And that is the closest I've had to giving someone, like, a terminology of found family.
Mm-hmm. So you reminded me of I have a really good friend. We still talk occasionally, even though he's in a different state. with friends since 8th grade. I will not use his name, but there was a time when we were like high school where he started saying, "Oh, I'm hanging out with this friend of mine. Won't use his name either. You want to hang out with us? We're going to rent a movie. Um, Friday nights, we'd rent bad horror movies, eat an entire pork cheese log. We love cheese logging movies, and then watch like Friday night videos the days before MTV. There was actually a TV show that showed videos at midnight on NBC. And so we'd hang out Friday nights. And then over time, I would start hanging out with with his friend, just us. Like we became good friends and we're still friends. He bequeathed a friend to me, especially when my other friend went off to college out of state and suddenly still going to do movie night at the other person's house. Oh, yeah. But at my friend's house, we were going to do movie night. His parents, his mother especially, hated my friend who introduced me, my buddy. But then like took a loving to me. Like we'd go and she's like, "You guys want snacks?" And I'm like, kind of hungry. She's like, "I'll make you something." And my buddy's like, "She wouldn't give me like a potato chip off the floor and she's cooking for you. What the hell?" And then eventually our friend whose house it was said, "Well, I think it's because when you come over, a person she doesn't like as much, we get stoned. But when Matthew's here, we don't get stoned because he doesn't do drugs. We watch movies and hang out. She likes that more. She knows that we're sneaking out to get stoned and not when Matthew's over."
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. So it reminded me of that friend of a friend kind of thing. And parents not liking him so much. Like your father didn't like him because you had fake drugs. My friend's parents didn't like my other friend because they had real drugs.
My dad wouldn't have disliked him about the fake drugs, except that he dug his heels in. And so this is such an embarrassing story. This is going to be a Patreon exclusive. My dad has moved all of that to you, but that's just because you're Jewish.
Yeah.
And he's jealous because he's only half Jew. He's a day walker. Or a Oy vey walker.
Or a Saturday walker.
Yeah. I use the term day walker for so many things all the time. And people, and out of context...
only Blade fans know what you mean.
No, they use day walker in other vampire media, I think. Don't they? I don't know. But I use it like...
I mean... In actual Bram Stoker's Dracula, he's a day walker. I mean, they don't use the term because he just say he doesn't have his height of his powers during the day, but he's out during the day.
I don't remember that, but I haven't.
Yeah, in the novel.
But yeah, so I say that all the time with like, oh, like my mom's a witch, my dad's a muggle. Like, oh, you're a day walker.
Yeah.
Like anytime you're a half something, I say day walker because I feel like it's really cool sounding, and
not as offensive as half.
I was going to say, and the terms for anybody that's half of something is almost always insulting, but daywalker is good. Like daywalker sounds cool.
Yeah.
So like like if you're a mudblood or any other thing, it's like, oh, that's like a slur. Let's chill out with that word.
Growing up, my best friend was half Italian, half Jewish. And I used to call him a half-breed all the time. But, like, it wasn't an insult back then. Well, I mean, it was an insult, I guess. But, like, Cher had a song, Half-Breed, about how she's half Native American. I mean, and it was about how people, were prejudiced against her. Yeah. But then eventually I just started calling him hybrid. Because it was as we got older, it's a cooler word.
I say we go with Daywalker. I love Daywalker. All right. So if you just heard this little clip, if you just heard me saying just a second ago, oh, this will be a good story for Patreon, and now you're hearing it. You did just miss some awesome...
like 10 minutes.
10 minutes of awesome Patreon. I want to say footage, I guess.
Complete with blood spurting. I mean, if Mike could picture what I'm saying, he would have been grossed out.
Yeah. Especially, like, out of a penis. It was weird. Usually I think of that out of a vagina. China.
Vagina is a country that can bring me to my knees.
Speaking of China, did you see that Trump won the Iowa caucus?
I did, by just about 50% of the vote, which for someone who's practically running as an incumbent, that's a low number.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, like for a normal bunch of primary, it's a huge number, but for someone who people see as the incumbent, he should have done higher.
Yeah. Anyway, Found family. I almost said found footage. I do like found footage stuff sometimes. Cloverfield. Um,
Blair Witch.
I never saw Blair Witch. I was too young, and then I
Too
think
late.
that by the time I was old enough that I could have just gone and seen it, it was like it's kind of dated. But anyway, found family. I don't have much else. By the way, did you see that I sent you access to a Google Doc several minutes before we started recording?
No, I did not see that yet.
That Google Doc is the script for us to do. I wrote it while I was waiting for you to sign on. We don't have to do it right now, but I just wanted to let you know that I have it. Anyway, what was I starting to say? Oh, found family. So,
Found family.
do you have any last thoughts on found family that you want to say?
We were really smart. At the end of this, I would cry and embrace you and call you brother, but nah.
Sarah does say, I mean, not so much that you are my brother, but she says you look like you could be my brother, and you know, because our sense of humor is so similar, I think she is you are what she imagines I will be in 10 years. So
If she knew about the time travel.
weird. Yeah. So in this situation, do I remarry and have new kids, or does Sarah become an Indian woman?
You ever read the book Relay by Ken Greenwood? Maybe you ever read the book Relay?
You sent it
It's
to
about a
me.
guy.
I'm pretty sure you sent that
Yeah,
to me, right?
yeah. I made it a PDF of it. Yeah, because you were writing time travel stuff at the time.
Yep.
Yeah, it's got something like that. You get to relive his life, and it's like, if you really loved your wife, do you try to time it to meet her again so that you can marry her again?
Did you ever see About Time with the guy that plays Hux in Star Wars? About Time. I think it was About Time.
I don't think so.
It was also like Margot Robbie was in the movie, but it was before Wolf of Wall Street, so she's not the main character. About Time, is that? I'm pretty sure that's the name of it. It was a good time travel one, and it really changed my feeling on time travel. Yeah, About Time. Domhnall Gleeson and Rachel McAdams. It's about a guy who can travel to any point in his past, and he just travels back into his own body. But like, if he does anything differently, when he comes back to the future, it's changed.
Yeah, like you see the butterfly effect.
Yeah, similar.
Yeah. As opposed to Slaughterhouse 5, where he keeps unstuck in time and he keeps jumping around and living his life, and he doesn't do anything different, but he experiences his life out of order.
Yeah. Yep. All right. For found family, I don't have much else. I will say that I am open to it now. I think that
you're willing to be found.
I would say I also think that at this point in my life, I'm open to it because I'm pretty social and stuff. I think that Sarah is less social in that way than me, and COVID has changed things. And Logan like enjoys his friends, but Logan loves just being home and like chilling and not going out and doing shit. And part of that found family thing, it can kind of work in a home. You can have parties and you can have cookouts and people can come over, but largely it has not worked that way for us.
Well, I think an interesting test of friendships in general is friends versus people you're friendly with.
Yeah.
Is like, if you're a friend at work or a friend in a certain environment, and then you're no longer at that job or in that environment, who are the ones you still keep in touch with and get together occasionally and do stuff with, versus, the exception of like Facebook liking their comment,
that's a great
minimal effort.
That's a great point. Because
it's like, I thought we were friends, but I never spoke to you again after we stopped working together, as opposed to you and I worked together for 1 year, and 5 years later we're still together.
I had a woman that I worked with a year and a half ago. She stopped working with me. Before she quit the job, she said something to me about, Mike, will you be at my funeral like someday? And I said, I don't know. Are we working together when you die in this situation? And she said, well, why does that matter? And I said, look, I don't want to like make you some false promise. Like, I've had people that I've worked with and you would have thought that we were like best friends and we would always be best friends and really good friends. And then you stop working, and very quickly it unravels, and those people are strangers to me now. And at a certain point in my life, those people were what I considered best friends. And I wasn't thinking of you, even though you and I were already good friends at this point in time. And I met Adam through work, and I met my friend Brian, who you haven't met, but he's been on the podcast before you took over as co-host, or became co-host. I met him through work. I have a lot of people that I've met through work that I am still amazing friends with, but I also know that I had some really good friends that dropped off the face of the earth and I don't talk to anymore. So I was being honest with her, and she was not happy about that. And then she stopped working there
for 20 years, and there's one person who I, every other week or so we'll text each other and get into a texting back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. One person after 20 years working, and people I liked and I was friendly with, and occasionally whatever I'll connect with someone over something happens. Oh, we got to send Stag a quick text, and we'll catch up one time.
Oh yeah,
but then not talk for 2 years. Matt's the only one that we still have an ongoing relationship. If he moved, but if he's in town, we're getting together for dinner for sure.
Yeah. And as soon as I said that to her, she gave her notice like a month later. I have talked to her, I think, twice. And one of them was that she came by the office to say hi to everybody. And then one time she texted me to see how everybody was doing. And I was like, everybody's good. And, it didn't happen. And then when my boss was leaving the job in October, my most recent boss was quitting. She gave her 2-week notice, and she's 25. This was her college internship, and then she I don't think she listens to the podcast, even though I asked her a million times to listen to the podcast. But in case she does listen, hi Lane. She was leaving leaving work, and she's young, and this was her first job, like I said, internship turned job, and then she was finally leaving. And she was like, yeah, we're gonna keep in touch with everybody. And I'm like, no, you're not. That's not how this works. And then I went home, and I was kind of bummed about that. And Sarah was like, you have a podcast with Matthew. What are you talking about? And she's like, and Adam is your business partner who you talk to all the time. Those are people you worked with. And I went back in the next day. I was like, hey, just so you know, like, I obviously was wrong, but sometimes it will, and sometimes it won't, and you just need to know that.
You discover some of the people you work with aren't really your friends if you're not gonna. I mean, you may not know it in the time.
Yeah,
you find out after the fact. Who did I keep in touch with?
Yep, yeah. And sometimes it is so. Like my boss, so that was my manager, but my boss, that was her boss, and had been my boss until a position was created in between us. That boss and I we still message, have Merry Christmas, and I talked to her a little bit. I would say I've talked to her a little bit every month in the last 6 months since I haven't been working with her. But like that is probably never going to be like a real hangout unless it's the whole group. But that that is the one that I used to refer to as the best boss I've ever had, tied with you. And she, her and I would say are somewhere in between that. Like, we're never going to hang out all the time, but I don't really see it dropping off the face of the earth either. So,
yeah, people have friendly acquaintances with.
Yeah.
I mean, like I have a friend who's in Philly who we don't see each other obviously, but he's not a social media user. We don't keep in touch. But when I first started at BMRU and I had a meeting in Philadelphia, turned out, I reached out to him and said, hey, can we get together? And it turned out my hotel was like a 2-minute walk from his office. So we met at his favorite post-work bar and got plastered together, took a bunch of selfies and texted it to people that we don't talk to very often, saying, look, we're together.
Yeah.
And if I go to another meeting in Philly, I probably would hang out with him again.
Yeah.
But I don't go out of my way to text him and keep in touch, because something really funny happens that he and usually 2 or 3 other people would appreciate, because they're friendly acquaintances.
Yeah. And sometimes if it's a friendly acquaintance and it goes long enough, it can be real fucking awkward hanging out with that person eventually, Yeah, I've been in that situation where you're like, oh yeah, we should get together. And then you get together and you're like, I'm a different person than the last time we hung,
When it's awkward to get back together, that's not really a friendship.
Yeah.
Like that's a test, right?
Yeah.
Like I have a buddy who moved out to California, and we've seen each other 3 times in person since then. And we're both busy, we're both married, we don't talk often.
Yeah.
But when he's on a business trip here, I'm on a business trip there, we get together. It's been 5 minutes since the last time we hung out. Like as soon as we're together, it's like
Oh yeah,
magic together again. That's the friendship. Whether we talk every day or not doesn't make a difference. It's not awkward when we're together.
yeah. I haven't seen Adam in the first episode of the podcast we recorded. He came over to my house and we recorded. That's the last time I saw Adam in person. Next time I see Adam in person,
Funeral.
assuming it's the two of us and it's not like Sarah and his wife and everybody, because that can get a little awkward. Like there can be a little bit of that like walking
Group dynamic.
walking on eggshells for a couple minutes till we all feel each other out. But if it's just the two of us, it'll be like no time passed.
Yeah.
I feel each other up, feel each other out. Especially
I'm sorry.
with his kids are teenagers, and Logan, like last time they came over, Logan was just like at this girl. I don't know that Logan would remember, but just this like 13-year-old girl, and Logan was just like, she's so pretty. Like he'd look in his eyes was, she is so pretty. All right. Should we do the
script?
script? Do you want me to do it, or you want to do it, or you want to tag team it?
Let's tag team her.
Okay. So I'll do the first paragraph, and you.
I'll do the second.
All right. Before we go, I just want to mention, if you're watching us on YouTube, please like, subscribe, ring the bell. Tell us about a topic that you might want to hear us cover. You can write that in the comments. That would be great.
If you're listening to this on Apple, please give us a follow and give us a 5-star review. Or you can hit the subscribe button they have there now. And for $3 a month, you get bonus content on each episode, as well as getting the episode 4 days early.
And if you're listening to us on any other podcast player, you can follow or subscribe or give it a thumbs up or whatever that particular podcast player has. If you'd like some of that sweet bonus content, you can go to patreon.com/talkingaboutthebigstuff, where you'll find the $3 option for non-Apple users and the $10 option, which has even wilder content. All right. Matthew, you got anything else you want to say last minute?
Hey, I do want to plug something real fast.
Sure.
My brothers and I, I've talked about this in the past, but I haven't talked about it in a while. We have the Brooklyn Brothers Food Review on YouTube, where we used to do hot sauce reviews under Cravat Attack, and now we do reviews of different foods. But we took a walk back on the hot sauce paths, and we had some hot sauce with Green Bean. If you're into New York Jets and YouTube, you know Green Bean. He's like the biggest New York Jets YouTuber. But he joined us to try some hot sauces, including the Last Dab Apollo, which is like over 2.5 million Scoville units, and it hurt. So check out Brooklyn Brothers Food Review for that live stream. It's out there now.
Did it hurt more going in or going out?
For me, I'm a going in guy.
Yeah.
I sometimes I get an upset stomach the next morning, but I have not had the ring of fire, as Johnny Cash would say.
Nice. I do have a fun story. This is not going to be, depending on how I tell this, it's not going to be Patreon. But this is a sample of the kind of shit you're going to get on the Patreon feed, ladies and germs.
Not the kind of shit you when you have hot sauce, though.
But, so, the more I think about it, the more this might have to be an exclusive on Patreon. We'll see. We'll see how I feel in the edit. So I work for a convenience store company, and we get lots of samples of weird shit in the stores, from they're trying to get us to put in the stores. One of those things this week was some kind of the big tall boy cans of water, but it was BLK water, like that's the brand. And when
you're trying to compete with Liquid Death, probably.
No. When you pour it in, Subba had it, and she poured it into like little shot glasses, and it's black. Ooh. And we read why. We like looked it up, and we read why. And she was like, "Oh, it's activated charcoal, and there's other detoxification stuff." And I was like,
magic water.
And I was like, I would be careful drinking that. I was like, your toilet's gonna look like Santa landed in it. And she's like,
you had the black Whopper.
And she's like, she goes, I already had one yesterday and I didn't have any problems. I'm like, all right, drink at your own risk. And then today she had another one. And I was like, hey, did you ever end up having that soot toilet situation? And one of my coworkers goes, Mike. This was the other day, and I was like, well, I just know from experience that if you eat activated charcoal, you're going to shit soot. Like
activated charcoal.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't digest, so it comes out eventually.
Yeah. For days. For a few days it can come out, depending on how much you have. But the story of my activated charcoal experience is a story for Patreon, perhaps during September. Right.
Okay, other than that, I want to thank everybody for coming out today, hanging out with us, talking about the big stuff. You're in my will. You're part of my family now.
The preceding podcast has been a Chocolate Diamond Media LLC production. Copyright 2023, all rights reserved.